A lot of people who have had the dream and thought, wouldn't it be great to own or operate a small inn or B&B in Maine? Terry Anderholm and her husband Jeff had that dream and they acted on it. They bought, renovated, and operated a luxury inn in Bar Harbor. And now Terry Anderholm has written a memoir about her experiences. It's called Inmates, and she's with us here on 207. I love this story. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for the invitation.
So let's go to the beginning. You bought the property in 2002. 26-room, big rambling Victorian with 10 guest rooms. Bass Cottage in the Field is what the name of the inn was. What kind of condition was it in when you guys purchased it?
In a word, decrepit. It was really operating more as a boarding house, but it had been the longest operating inn in Bar Harbor, 54 years under the same family.
So it needed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of repairs.
That's what we thought it was going to take, and then it turned out to be a little bit more than that.
Well, you were actually working with a contractor. You had people who were in who had already done a lot of work but had a lot more to do, and they gave you an update on the budget when you asked for it. How much over budget was the job?
Well, at one time they let us know that it was $900,000 over budget, which was shocking, of course, and really rocked us. But Jeff was able to, my husband Jeffrey, he was able to work with them to try to bring it together so we could open on time and more economically.
Now, you both had come to this from jobs in the corporate world,
right,
and you decided that you, again, wanted to follow this dream of running an inn, but you didn't bring with it great wealth. So you needed this to be a profitable venture. When you got that reality check of how much over budget it was, you were able to make some changes and keep going. So you started up the inn, but you're about a year in and things are going okay but not great. And you had to make a major career decision. What did you decide to do?
Well, it was obvious that one of us had to go back to Boston and get a job. So I was very fortunate that I had a good connection with my former employer, and they asked me to come back and to get back involved in my former career. So I did that. And
did you kind of feel, oh boy, we didn't make it work. This isn't going the way we thought it would?
Right. You know, we had hit an air pocket. It looked like I had just struck another one too. So it wasn't what we expected.
What's at the heart of any small inn like this, and what's at the heart of your book, is the people, the guests, 95% of whom are really good.
Wonderful. Yes. Innkeeping is a joy. It was a privilege, but there were occasionally a few troublemakers.
Well, it's the troublemakers that make for the interesting reading.
Yes, it does.
There's no question about it. You have people who are members, guests who were inducted, without their knowing it, into something called the DNB Club. D as in David, and B as in boy. What's the DNB Club?
Do not book. So if we had a rough experience with an inn guest, we maintained a little list so that if they wanted to come back to the inn, we would have an opportunity to think about it before we took the booking.
And yet, your general policy towards difficult guests was to kill them with kindness.
Right.
Did that usually work?
It usually worked. It did take a lot of sugar, though, and sometimes artificial sweetener, because it wasn't necessarily easy to deal with difficult guests.
Sometimes these people were just beyond exasperating, and not just exasperating, but destructive, right?
Some were a little destructive. Some treated the inn as if it was their home, and perhaps they felt overly comfortable at the inn.
Over the years, you heard every question under the sun from people who were visiting the inn and visiting MDI. One of the questions that just floors me is people would ask you, where can I find a real lobster?
Right. Where can I find a real lobster? Which I think, because many places you can't find lobster anywhere, but here in Maine you can find it everywhere, they felt that they wanted to have a real lobster pound experience. So there were plenty of options.
You ran the inn for the better part of 2 decades, and then you decided it was time to step on and move on to the next chapter of your life. So you have sold it, and now you've written the book about it. This gave you a chance to look back on that chapter of your life. What are the thoughts that you have about it now?
It was one of the richest experiences of my life. I learned a lot about myself through the process. I feel that I'm a more resilient person, and I certainly have a tremendous love of humanity, and I've grown to understand how to manage difficult situations.
You really see, in your words, life's rich pageant. Terry Anderholm, thank you so much for coming in. Again, the name of the book is Inmates, an Innkeeper's Memoir. Anyone who has any interest in maybe buying and running their own inn ought to read this book. We've got more information about it in the 207 section of our app or website, and stick around. We're going to return right after this.